You want me to be by the microphone?
Yes.
All right. All right.
I'll rectify that.
Okay. How close do I need to be? Hear me? Okay. Welcome everybody. This is a great Thursday, the Thursday before. Well, really, we're like having our own GIS day here, right? Because every day is GIS. Every day is GIS day. The official GIS day, International GIS Day is Wednesday, November 15th, I think, which is next Wednesday, but we just couldn't wait that long. And so we wanted to get this party started a little earlier. And so we're excited to be doing that today. And we're really excited to have Dr. Joseph Kerski here from Esri, our friends at Esri. I'm going to let you introduce yourself here in just a second. But I've known Joseph for, gosh, I don't know.
The Cretaceous, the Holocene.
Geologic time frame, yep. And it's been great to have you as a colleague and a friend, and it's been great to be able to watch all that you do, being just such a great evangelist for geospatial, really all around the world. This guy's been all around the world. And so it's really special that we have him here today to help us really raise awareness about geospatial and kind of come together as a university geospatial community. I'm going to turn it over to Joseph in just a second, but don't forget, right after this, upstairs in the older part of the building, third floor, Ag 301, we've got a birthday cake celebrating the birth of the Bachelor of Science degree in GIST. All right. Yeah, let's hear it for that. And so that's from 4 to 5 immediately after this. There's also some great swag that Joseph brought with him here that's kind of spread around, and we'll make sure that gets back to the conference room where the cake is afterwards as well. So without further ado, I bring you Dr. Joseph Kerski.
Thank you, Jeff. Much appreciated. Well, greetings, folks. Good to be here. Really, I'm the warm-up band because your wonderful, innovative, energetic professors, Dr. Chen, Margot's here, Beth is here. Beth, I hear you napping, but I can't come home right now. Jeff, Paddington, I mean, you folks have been some of my heroes. And as Jeff said, I'm very honored to have the position that I have at Esri on the education team. Is basically to support and encourage and advise schools, universities, tribal colleges, technical colleges, community colleges, libraries, museums, anywhere there's education happening. I and my teammates work alongside of these fine institutions. We are there to support you. Sometimes when you go to websites, there's a bot that says, hey, may I help you, right? And it's not a real person. We're actually real people. We're a team. We're human beings. It's not just some web bot, but it's really in collaboration and partnership with you all that we work. Oftentimes when people don't know Esri and our culture and the way we operate, they say, hey, Joseph, doesn't Esri have like an education fund? Because we want you to fund our lab and you can get your name on the wall. First, we don't really care about having our name on the wall. And second, it's actually better that we don't have a fund because the value added is this kind of thing. How can we be of any service to you going forward in your geospatial journey? And I don't mean the 80s band journey. I mean your geospatial journey. Some of you are like, there's a band? Yes, check them out sometime. So today I've been asked to explore with you over the next 3 hours. Just kidding. We don't have 3 hours. Coding your geospatial pathway. And Beth, you missed our cool quiz. We dropped Wyoming on top of Olympus Mons. Oh my gosh. It's the size of Wyoming on Mars, that one volcano. We also compared, right, folks? We compared Wyoming to Colorado. That's where I'm from, for those of you that came in after we did that in our little web mapping application. But we won't let 41 degrees north come between friends, right? We're both rectangular state people. Well, they're not really rectangles. They're not really a rhombus either. They're a series of corrected lines from the 19th century that we could talk about in a geodesy discussion. But the point is, I love coming up here and I've had long respect for the program here. So kudos to you students. You've picked a great program. You've got great professors, great facilities here. It's going to serve you well going forward. So coding your geospatial pathway. Let's just chat about what brought you to this moment. Maybe a friend, a family member, someone in your circle of acquaintances that encouraged you to pursue geospatial, but maybe it was something in your own mind. Maybe someone lets you see a future vision of yourself. Maybe it was a mentor, a teacher you had at primary, secondary school. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was you saying to yourself, you know what? I'm going to make a difference on the planet and to its people. Something in your past brought you to, and I realize some of you students are just taking the intro to GIS class. You're not going to be GIS managers or GIS technicians or GIS supervisors, but you're going to use geospatial in your wildlife biology careers, right? Or in your city planning careers, or somewhere you've already decided that, yes, this is a useful tool. And what I want to say today also is, this is the most important tool. You're going to use QGIS, you're going to use Envy, you're going to use ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Online, and other tools. But they're good tools, and they're means to a greater goal. The greater goal is a more sustainable, more resilient, more equitable world, right? That's the higher, more noble goal. Does that make sense? So sometime in the past, you've decided, okay, I'm going to care for the earth and its people. Maybe you were the family navigator on your trips, right, with your family. And you said, I'm going to hold the atlas or the digital device, and I'm going to navigate my family to our vacation spot. Maybe that was you. Maybe it was a book you read or a field trip that you took as a younger person, but you decided, I'm going to make a positive difference on the planet. And to me, that's what geospatial technology allows us to do, make a positive impact on the planet and its people. Now, in my case, without boring you to tears, in my case, I read The Last Great Auk when I was a middle school student every year. It was about the last flightless birds that swam basically from an island off of Iceland to North Carolina and back. They were about this tall. They could not fly. And I would get to the end of that book every year that when I would read it as a younger person, and it would be 1844, and I knew the last two adult great auks would be clubbed that year on that island, and their chick in the egg was going to be crushed. So that was the end of the great auks. That was the last day they were on the planet. And I got to the end of that, as a 11, 12-year-old, and I thought, we can't let this happen. What can I do to prevent this from happening? So again, think about your own moments where you've had these key decision times that led you to this program and these fine people that are around you. And I'm not going to bore you to tears with my own background, but I'm going to share this for two reasons, because Jeff was didn't want to introduce me in a long way, and I appreciate that. But I'm going to share this in two ways, to encourage you in two ways. A, if you can see in my background, you're not stuck at the same organization for the rest of your career, right, folks? You can move around, as I have, in nonprofit, government, academia, and private industry. And second, threading throughout all that is geospatial technology and spatial thinking. Why do I keep saying spatial thinking? Because again, this tool is the most important one. Your geospatially thinking, critically thinking brain. Nurture this tool. And again, you've picked a great institution to do that in and beyond. So I'm hoping that's encouraging in two different ways there. And I think you can make a positive impact in lots of these different sectors. Now, again, thinking about how did you come to this moment? This was my backyard when I was a kid. So I grew up in Mesa County, FIPS code 08077. That's pretty geeky. That's the state is 08, the county code is 077 in a GIS. But the point is, that was my backyard. So my parents owned the motel. My mom was also a school teacher, 5th grade. Yeah, go mom. But the point is, how many of you ever stayed at a hotel or a motel and there's someone living behind the front desk? There's an apartment behind there. There's some Super 8s like that where there's actually an apartment inside the hotel. Well, that was my experience. So dinner times, if someone came in the office, one of my folks was always up, may I help you, type of thing. But it really nurtured my love for hearing about where they're from and where they're traveling and where they're going to go next on vacation or for business or whatever. So that really was a really interesting time for me. The land of the Ute Mountain Utes, so Western Colorado, and meeting people and making maps. So this is one of the geeky maps I made when I was a teenager. On big poster board, I had docks, address ranges. What kid cares about address ranges? What kid knows about address ranges? So all my streets were named. university campuses, freeways. I had a lot of freeways on my maps, maybe because Grand Junction didn't have very many freeways back then. It had I-70, and that was basically it. But the point is, you had something that you did, and maybe you still do, that nobody else likes to do. That's okay. Nurture that. Champion that. That's going to be unique things that you bring to your employer someday. So it's okay if you don't share some of the same interests that some of your circle of friends do. And those are my address ranges on. Look at it, the 3500 North Block, the 4200 North Block. Oh my gosh, that's so geeky. But you did geeky things too. All my photos as a younger person were all of landscapes. Excuse me, I'm just a kid. May I come into your office? I know you're going to have a great view of the valley from that office. I just want to get that angle. So I'd bother people in their offices, and I'd go to promontories of peaks and mountain ranges and stuff like that. So all of my pictures, it's not that I was antisocial, but I had very few people in my pictures. I also loved getting AM radio stations and figuring out and mapping where I could get after dark where all those AM radio stations were from. Especially was cool if I got the one from Juarez, because it's a foreign country. I got the Juarez radio station in Grand Junction and KCFR in San Francisco and WLS in Chicago. Pretty cool. The first all-web GIS workshop, so journeying forward in the journey of GIS, was right here at the University of, let's just use our mapping tools. This is a story map, right? This is a story map. The University of Oklahoma, 2010. I know many of you were probably 10 years old or 7 years old then, or even younger. Maybe you weren't even born. You were born. Anyway, the point is that I was so nervous. Is this going to work? It's just web-based tools. There's no desktop software. Is it going to fly for 3 days? It worked, but I was super nervous the whole time. Is the bandwidth going to hold? So it just shows you how much we take for granted. Web mapping services, web mapping applications now, and it's not really all that old. So that was the very first one. But you have geospatial GIS educational leaders right here in Wyoming. Last year, and I've mentioned some of my professor heroes are right here in the room. Last year, I was also here in Wyoming for GISday. I was at Laramie County Community College. They have a great couple of courses there, great geospatial set of courses down there at Laramie County Community Colleges. So campus. So I love this state and I love what you folks do. And I love this region. Now here's a geeky picture. Where's this? 42 North, 106 West. That's in Wyoming. Oh my gosh. If only we had mapping tools. Let's go to our mapping tools. We've got, look at this. Oh, look at that. Okay, we've got ArcGIS Online here. We've got, okay, we're going to zoom into Wyoming and wouldn't it be great if we could have a position? Oh, look at this. We've got some tools here. What about location? Oh, I want to go to a certain place on the planet, 42 North. You know where I'm going with this, right, folks? Because this is actually where the latitude and longitude lines cross. I know that's pretty geeky. That's right in this field. That's just north of Laramie. Right, 41 is the Colorado-Wyoming border, 42 is 1 degree north of that, and 46 is actually pretty close to campus here. So I was 1 degree north. I thought, I'll get there super early before I have to go to the University of Wyoming campus, and I'll go trudging out into this field. Why not? I felt so centered because that's where the latitude and longitude lines cross. Now, this project is actually, it's kind of like geocaching, but it's leave no trace. So I wasn't able to leave anything there, no marker, leave nothing but footprints, right? Kill nothing but time, take nothing but pictures. That's the whole goal of this particular project. But I love teaching with that because you can see what the ecoregions are like at each one of these intersections, what the water is like, is there any evidence of human habitation, etc. I would submit that you all are leaders. There are people that want to change the world. There are people that dream about changing the world. You people in geospatial technology, you're actually doing it. You're building the national spatial data infrastructure. When you're mapping trees, when you're mapping soil moisture, when you're mapping water quality, weather, etc. You're part of this change agent movement on the planet where we see that geospatial is becoming threaded into everyday decision-making, right? From local to global scale. And think about the problems that we have in our world. Oh, everything's good, right? We have drive-through frozen yogurt. We have Dutch Bros. Everything's good, right? What are some problems? Climate, other challenges.
Conflict.
Global conflicts, local strife and conflicts, all scales, indeed.
Hunger.
Hunger, okay. The UN SDGs. education, access to fresh drinking water. We can name all those are spatial issues. Keep going. Deforestation, the acidification of the oceans, etc. Hazards of all kinds, earthquakes, wildfires, floods, tornadoes. So we could go on, right, folks? We have some pressing, complex problems in our world, and they're increasingly affecting our everyday lives, okay? So geospatial technology helps us to respond effectively and also plan for all of those issues because they're all spatial. They happen to real people, they're real events in real places. So I would submit to you all that we all want to see this more equitable, sustainable, resilient world, and geospatial helps us to get there. So really, you folks, that's why I say you folks are some of the leaders in this. But also, this picture kind of conveys the sense of the following. We feel empowered with these geospatial tools at our fingertips, right, folks? But we also feel kind of vulnerable, don't we? With hazards, with COVID, supply chain management issues, we feel a little bit vulnerable. The power outage in Texas a couple years ago, maybe our electrical system, maybe our power grid isn't as resilient as we thought. I thought all that stuff was mapped into GIS. Okay, it was, but maybe we need to build some resilience there. So we feel challenged, but we also feel empowered. So it's this a very interesting point in history, I think. But you have a key role in this decade. You're building this national spatial data infrastructure, not just the standards and the metadata and the web mapping applications and other things, but you're building the community, right? Some of these colleagues here of yours, your classmates, your professors, they could be lifelong colleagues. Okay, people that you actually collaborate with for many years to come. So treasure those relationships. I think you'll find, and Paddington and others, you can back me up on this. The geospatial community is all about helping people and helping the planet. You never meet anyone that is, I'm not going to share any data with you. They're all about how can I help you, mentoring you, and being mentored along the way. So you're really revolutionary. I wrote a whole book about geospatial being revolutionary, and this is one of my books about that particular topic. Only my mom and I read it. Really, nobody else has read it. But the point is, this is revolutionary. Interpreting our world. It's all about the advent of GPS, GIS, different ways of thinking over the centuries. So changing the way we see our world. That's your job using geospatial technology in your future wildlife biology, city planning, environmental management job. You're helping people to see the world in new ways. And you need to articulate your elevator speech. More about that in a bit. Because some people will still say, hey, I've got Google Maps on my phone. Why do I need you? Why do I need you with your geospatial technology skills? Because I've got this map that tells me where the public library is and my directions to my grandmother's house and how do I get across campus. That's good that geospatial technology has sort of eased its way into everyday lives. How many of you have a fitness app? Okay. How many of you have gotten a package delivered at, on your doorstep? You've taken Uber, etc. So geospatial technologies is all around us, but it's kind of like pushing buttons on an elevator, right? You push buttons, you expect something to happen. That's to me kind of like how geospatial technology, it's operating behind the scenes. How many of you had something to eat yesterday, right? How did that food get delivered? How is the electrical powered in this room? How is this computer being powered? It's all geospatial technologies, right? So your job, part of your job is going to have to be this sort of evangelization where you're articulating why this matters to society. And again, there's no shortage of, you folks have been instrumental in building these right here in the room, Jeff and others, the Wyoming Geospatial Hub. Oh my gosh, the cool things that you have going on, the Eco-Informatics Initiative here. There's just the operations. Oh my goodness gracious. I met with Wendy this morning, the facilities manager. Every tree, right? Every electrical line, every water line is mapped. And why? Because Wendy needs a job? No, because people are asking, okay, we're building a huge new, what are you building over here? A dormitory, a classroom building? Dormitory. Okay, cool. Anyway, over here. So there's construction going on. There's all kinds of decisions that need to be made. Hey, what happens if there's a weather event at 4 p.m. on a Thursday? And where are the students? Where are the faculty? Where are the visitors? Where's the emergency shelters? I mean, those things need to be thought of, right? Because we have a dynamic planet. It's a lot more interesting, but a lot more dynamic and oftentimes personally hazardous than if we were on Mercury, right? Where a meteorite might hit the surface every few hundred years or something like that. Nothing much else happens, but here on the Earth it does. So you've got some real leaders that have I would encourage you, this whole thing is a story map. How many of you have made a story map? It's the story of a lovely web map. Yes, exactly. You've built a story map. It's online. You can share it just like I've shared this. So you can actually go here, and some of the links that I have in here, I'm not going to have time to go through today because I don't want to, I'm being sensitive to your time, but you can actually dig into some of these in a deeper way. And then you can email me on Saturday night, Joseph, I'm digging into your story map. And I'll say, that's really grand. But remember the work-life balance, you know. Why should you care about geospatial education? Well, faculty, right? Your faculty here, other faculty that I visit, they're trying to continually make education relevant, exciting, innovative, etc. They're continually reshaping. I was just meeting with a couple faculty a moment ago, Dr. Chan, Dr. Paddington, and we talked about how do we shape the program so it's relevant going forward. You don't want to just teach and coastal. Remember that song, Party Like It's 1999? We don't want to teach like it's 1999. Some of you are like, is that a song? Yes. The point is, we don't want to coast along and teach the same old stuff that we've taught before because it worked then. The world is changing. Educational expectations, societal expectations, the geotechnology, all of those are changing simultaneously. So we need to continually innovate. And that's again why I salute you all. All y'all. Ustedes, tú. Okay. And also you students and new grads, you seek to be a positive change agent, right? Really, ultimately, what pathway do you want to take? I've showed you a little bit of my pathway. I'm going to submit that these are a couple forces that are acting to bring us to a pivotal moment. You may disagree with these. This is a list, kind of like the 5 coolest bands of all time. The 5 coolest places in Wyoming that you should see before you die. You know, they're debatable, and we could have a discussion about these, but the awareness thing, okay, I'm on airport shuttles and stairwells, on elevators, etc. I hear people talking about the issues that you raised earlier, water, climate, population change. Those are important issues that we need to address. So there's a rising awareness, which is actually good for your future job prospects and your role in society. People are enabled to use some of these tools at least. I could share that scale, right? This Mars web mapping application with family members, friends, and they get that. Oh, that's fascinating that I can drop Wyoming on Olympus Mons or Mount or the Grand Canyon on the Valles Marineris and compare scales and look at that. It's actually, some of these things can be shared. And that's also a place where you and I as geospatial people can show some leadership, because as more and more people use geospatial technologies, you have a deeper and a richer knowledge of this. You can actually be leaders in those other disciplines. So, for example, I've got 2 missions on the education team that I'm on. One, a deeper notion of geospatial. It's not just learning ArcGIS Pro 3.1. Okay, that's a tool, and that's a very useful tool. But again, this tool is more important, and you got to think about GIS as a data gathering, mapping, analysis, communicating the results, modeling, decision-making environment. The deeper notion of GIS. Deeper notion. And then the second notion is the broader notion of GIS, that GIS is too valuable to just be in, and I love your geospatial program here, but it's just too valuable to be in 1 or 2 departments on campus. It really is. It needs to be over, in the business school, supply chain management, risk assessment, target marketing. It needs to be in sociology, looking at patterns of human behavior. It needs to be over in language arts. I got a call from another university not too long ago. Hey, Joseph, we've heard about this story map thing. Okay, that's great. It was a fine arts department in a university. They want to enable their stories, their sculptures, their paintings. And so they love the idea of mapping all of these stories. And it was a nice opportunity for me to say, hey, there's this GIS thing that goes behind and underneath and underpins the story maps. I wouldn't have gotten a call from fine arts a couple of years ago. So it shows that more and more people are realizing that maps are analytical tools. They're not just reference documents. Where is Denver? Where is Mesa County? Where is Cheyenne? Where is Laramie, et cetera, right? They're analytical tools. Let me just have a moment. They are. They're not just where is, it's why things are where they are. And how things should be in the future, right? Ooh. Planning for a more resilient future. And the geotechnologies having evolved into the cloud, that to me is a game-changing paradigm shift. It's great to have your docs in the cloud. How many of you use Google Docs, OneDrive, et cetera, right? Use those all the time. So you can collaborate, right? With a classmate, you turn in, multiple editors, et cetera. And it's great that you have your music in the cloud, your ABBA's greatest hits online. That was a band. Okay, the point is, you've got that, but it's even better to have geotechnology in the cloud. Why? Because in the past, when Jeff and I, or Paddington and I, wanted to share data, it was really clunky. We had, we can't share it on a disk. Oh, we don't have enough server space. Now we can collaborate on models, methods, maps, web mapping applications, et cetera. So it's actually a big paradigm shift, because to solve these problems in our world, we've got to collaborate between disciplines and between people. And so the broader notion of GIS, I think, is really key. And then citizen science. People have been collecting data in the field for hundreds of years, but having, for example, the ability to do that in a web mapping environment is a huge leap forward. Now I can map all the tree species, or all the infested with pine beetle tree species that I'm collecting. The Forest Service doesn't have enough staff, right, to send field workers. So a lot of that data comes from the community. And so having tools like Survey 123, ArcGIS field maps, iNaturalist, Quick Capture, et cetera, those are wonderful tools to be able to instantly map what you're gathering. And then, of course, don't just map it, make decisions on it. The reason why I say that is because sometimes people send me these URLs. Joseph, I've got my data on the map. That's great, I'll say. And? Why do I say and? What do you learn? The goal is to understand something in a deeper, richer way. Don't just put your data on the map. Now you're going to be texting Joseph. The guy from Esri is saying, don't just map things. Yes, exactly. The map is always just a means to a greater, higher, more noble goal. And finally, storytelling with maps. I mean, maps have been used to tell stories for thousands of years. Maps are very effective at getting a lot of information in a small amount of space, whether that small amount of space was in the past Babylonian clay tablets, right? Al-Idrisi's map on 2 plates of silver from the 1100s, etched on cave walls, or in our digital age on a small device or a screen like this, right? They've been very effective means of communication. Part of that, though, is I want people to be thoughtful. And I talked to a group of students this morning in Dr. Margot's class. Remember that? About ethics. Maybe some of you were like, was Joseph in my class? Oh, yeah. Anyway, the point is, it was all about the ethical implications of mapping, that it does have a big impact on how people perceive problems and issues in their world. So be thoughtful about the maps you make and share, because it's no longer you just publishing an article in a journal or a chapter in a book or a textbook. And nothing against those things. And I've done all those things myself as well. But I also make web maps and share that with a wider community. Be thoughtful about what you're sharing and where you're sharing it to, and that sort of thing. Not all information needs to be shared. I'm a member of the caving community. I love caves. There's a National Cave Protection Act, right? You don't just put your caves on a map and share it with everyone, right? So storytelling with maps. I'm going to skip to a couple of key trends. Again, this is my own list in, my journeys and travels, and you may disagree, and that we can have a discussion about that. But it makes sense that we have a 3D set of analytical tools. We've had 3D visualization for years, but now having a 3D set of analytics is important, right? We need to be understanding our world in 3D because we live on a 3D planet. And then in the past, the people mapping outside spaces, the GIS people, and the people mapping interior spaces, the CAD, BIM, Building Information Management people, were sort of like, speaking Spanish and Portuguese. They understood a few words in common, but they really weren't working together. So now we've got tools, ArcGIS Indoors, ArcGIS Urban, City Engine, and others that sort of are merging these worlds. And that's important, right? Because let's say you want to, again, coming back to your resiliency plan for the campus, you've got to have the interior spaces and the exterior spaces mapped in a common environment. Same with a city outside of a university campus, et cetera. And now having that real-time analytics with the real-time data feeds from the Internet of Things, that's huge too, right? You want the wildfires right now, or as near to now as possible. You want the wildfire perimeters. You want the real-time weather. You want the real-time stream flow. You want the real-time traffic, or as close to real-time as possible. That's what people want, right? And so with this web GIS paradigm shift, we now have those data as services, not locked in space and time, but live services. Be cautious and be critical of those live data services because they can be an error, as I shared with Dr. Margot's students this morning, but they are wonderful to have. It is just like, it's like my precious. This is awesome. What we have at our fingertips, truly it is. And enterprise and web GIS. GIS in the past was kind of like, oh, you want some maps and you want some spatial data? Yeah, go see, it's probably an emergency sign, so I'm not going to open this door. Go see those GIS people. They're down the hall and to the right. They're nice people. They're a little geeky, and sometimes they eat out of vending machines, but they're really good people, and you should go see them. If you want a map in your, like Albany County or the state of Wyoming, there was a few specialized GIS people. Nowadays, and this is what I mean by web GIS, oh, apologies to the people listening online when I stray from the microphone. It is more accessible to more people in an organization. So think of people at the Nature Conservancy, the state of Wyoming Fish and Game, NOAA, USGS. You've got more people that are at least empowered to do some geospatial technology. So that's good. It also is, again, an opportunity for you all being deeper into the swimming pool of geospatial to show some leadership, saying, okay, maybe that soil moisture map that you're making, maybe you shouldn't use a rainbow color ramp on it because is red more, does it have more soil moisture than blue, or is green more than, no, don't use that color ramp, use something else. And that's where you can advise them on things like that. And artificial intelligence and machine learning. Oh my gosh, we have some AI-powered feature extraction tools, just to name a few examples, where you can get a set of satellite images and you can extract not every single building, tree, car, sign from those images, but 98 or 99%. That's transformational. First of all, be critical of what goes into that model. Don't just accept it and punch that button and, okay, wow, look at all the features I just extracted. I've just saved myself thousands of hours of manual data collection. True, but know what went into that model. But secondly, understand that it's going to miss some. So you still need to have your eye on the data. Don't just, and I'm sure your professors say the same thing, don't just click, 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 and there's my result. What happened here when you did an intersect or a proximity or whatever else you're doing in your GIS? Be thoughtful at each step of the way. So, but they're transformational, right? In terms of not just the tools, but if I can generate a map with ChatGPT, give me a web-based map of Wyoming with 3 points of interest on it at the highest peaks. Great, done. Okay, I can also generate a map of an unreal place. So again, it to me, being a sort of a GIS and society person that really is sensitive to this, and I hope I'm conveying some of the, just be thoughtful about this. As we go forward into this world of these tools being very powerful, be ever so critical of the data. You don't believe everything you see on the web, right? Right, Joseph? Right. You don't believe every single map you see, right? They could be intentionally or more commonly unintentionally misleading in various ways. So lots of opportunity there. I think we're in phase 2 of GIS. Here's just a little example. And traffic accidents, it's affected my family, perhaps your family, a serious issue, right, that affects individuals and families. So in the past, what we could do is, okay, we've got a county here and we can map the traffic accidents and look at, space and time, and we can symbolize this in different ways inside our GIS software. Now what we can do is we can say, oh, we're going to take this data, we're going to make some sort of hex bins, in this case, actual hexagons. And then we're going to take those and we're going to run it through our spatial statistics model, and we're going to look at what intersections are consecutively statistically higher over space and over time. And we're going to focus on those because every single project, right, that you and I will deal with has some sort of constraints on budget, time, deadlines, et cetera, right? Staff. So you're going to say, I'm going to be as effective as possible in a short amount of time that I have to make my community safer. I'm going to focus on those intersections. So these tools are actually, so the GIS enables a safer community. And it shows that we're in this, not just mapping things in the traditional way that we were 10, even 5 years ago. So I've already shared a couple of things. don't just stop at the map, right? Do your analysis. And also don't get too attached to the tools. The tools evolve. Here's a picture I took in an actual high school. It's now a doorstop. But what was it in the past? Some of you know what kind of computer. It's an old Mac from 1988-ish. Okay. It was about $3,000, as I recall, new. Now it's a doorstop. Okay, your devices might not be too heavy now, but that treasured phone that you're using, it's going to be a paperweight, okay? ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Online evolves every quarter. So when I was a kid at Mesa County, FIPS code 08077, they brought us to Powderhorn Ski Area. They basically gave us one instruction. Keep your knees bent and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Just keep your knees bent, Joseph. You'll be fine going down this slope. Okay, great. But it was a cheap deal. You know, we got to go up there 4 times, the Powderhorn Ski Resort. Pretty cool. Off the Grand Mesa, you know, lava cap rock. What's not to love? But you got to keep your knees bent when you're using any technology this rapidly is evolving as GIS, right? You folks know that, but don't get too attached to, I've got to have this tool and it's going to look exactly the same way as it is next year. No, next year it may be in a different place, but you know, to create the riparian zone around your stream, you've got to do some sort of proximity or buffer. But also think about this. There are some tools that are rapidly evolving and taking hold that don't have a traditional interface as we know it in GIS. ArcGIS Insights is one of those tools. You drag a map to the graph pane. Oh, I've got some choices on what kind of graph I can make. P-A-N-E, not P-A-I-N. I know GIS can be kind of painful sometimes, but it's P-A-N-E. So, but it doesn't really have a traditional interface. So also kind of keep your knees bent on that. It might not look like the traditional GIS interface. Some people say that's too constraining right now already. So keep the advice coming forward. And all 3 legs of the geoliteracy stool matter. I would submit to you all that content knowledge matters. Learn about, in a deep way, demography, health, water quality, habitat, whatever you folks are interested in. That still matters. Even at a software company like Esri, we want people with domain knowledge, with content knowledge. We don't want just people that know how to run software. We want people that have the domain knowledge. So that's an important part of this tool. The skills is not just the GIS-y skills, it's your coding skills. We'll get to that. Your presentation skills, your data management skills, etc. I'm hoping I'm backing up what your professors are saying. But the geographic perspective, even if you aren't, geographer is not your career goal. I realize it's probably 1% of the people in this room. Your wildlife biologist track, you want to be a city planner, or maybe, I don't know, Joseph, I'm still kind of figuring this out. That's okay too. But the geographic or spatial perspective, it's kind of like, if I can use a physical geography or geology analogy, it's sort of like taking a column of a sediment and you've got cobbles and boulders in there, right? You've gone into the field, some of you, and you've got cobbles and boulders, to me, represent the major disciplines: sociology, business, geoscience, etc. And the soil, the grains between those that touches all of them is geospatial thinking and technology. It's hard to grab, though. It's hard to quantify. It's a struggle for universities to justify why this should be a thing. I mean, it took the University of Wyoming lots of, I'm sure, knocking on doors and tapping on windows and staying up late, writing memos to get the geospatial program here beefed up to where it is now. And kudos to you all. But that wasn't easy because it's not like, oh, talk to a random person on the street. What's geospatial technology? Okay, what's engineering? Okay, I can understand what engineering is. So it's hard to articulate, but very important to society. So my own research is about this: teaching and learning with GIS. In case you wonder, hey, Joseph, you've got a cushy job. All you get to do is write curriculum and go visit campuses and talk to people about their programs and advise them. But I actually have carved out, and I just advise this to you also, carve out for yourself some portion of your job, and it depends on where you work, of course, but that is something that you really, really are passionate about. Now, we all have to do things at work that, okay, it's not our favorite things. But in my case, I've carved out, I'm not really paid to do research at Esri, but I'm on the education team. So it's important to me, and also as a researcher, to keep contributing to the educational community, to the scholarship out there. So my own research is about this kind of thing: online instruction in geospatial technology. So sure, I've got articles like this. out there about teaching and learning with GIS and why it matters and why people do it and how effective it is in helping people learn business or engineering or etc. So that's my own research, and I love having that as a wedge of my overall weekly tasks. My colleague, David DiBiase, teaches at Penn State, was at Esri for about 5 years or so, has an essay, very intriguing title, Stop Teaching GIS. Very kind of a prodding, kind of a against the grain kind of a title for an essay. But his point was, we're not wanting you to just learn the software. And so instructors are not wanting you to just get really good at certain GIS tools. That's why they built the program here at the university the way it is, because they want you to be spatial and critical thinkers. So in the old days, probably before some of you were born, but I think some of you kind of can relate from maybe prior experiences, it was heavily, GIS programs and courses were heavily about how to do the GIS task. And that's still important, right? If we're going to eventually look at change over space and time for Laramie, eventually you're going to need to geo-register a historical aerial photo or a web map or a paper map on top of ArcGIS or some other GIS, right? You're going to need to do, how are you going to need to do that? You're going to need to know how to geo-register that against an established coordinate system. So that's an important skill, but the goal is not to geo-register. It's an important skill to learn, that the goal is to look at change over space and time in Laramie, right? So that's what I mean by bringing up David's point here. And there are, again, lots of nice connections. I mean, you've got a very rich indigenous community here in Wyoming. And so I work with tribal colleges. I just wanted to mention that because of a couple of reasons. Number one, the whole notion of holistic thinking, the ecosystem is connected to the lithosphere, is connected to the hydrosphere, is connected to the biosphere, is connected to the anthroposphere. That goes deep into indigenous communities, right? They have always thought about things in a holistic way. And so geospatial technologies, when I work with tribal colleges in particular, it's not a leap at all. It's like, okay, yeah, we understand this. And so I think that holistic thinking, it would do well in many, many sectors of society. So I encourage you to think deeply and spatially about this. Here's an example of story maps for a project that I worked in, kind of a simple example. But in this case, we did this. So kind of a simple example. You see where I'm going with this. Lakota and English words for physical and cultural things on the landscape. Short-term goal, helping the students build story maps. Okay, so not just the tools, but as we talked about in Dr. Margot's class, do you have permission to use that image in your story map? So all kinds of copyright issues and where should you share that story map? And so sharing issues, but the higher, more noble goal was to draw attention to endangered indigenous languages. As many of you probably are aware, many of them around the whole world are in danger of being extinct in less than a generation. Because why? If the younger people aren't learning those languages, what happens when the elders pass away? So drawing attention to that whole phenomenon, and okay, maybe we need to start simply here, but what we could do is hold tribal elders, right? Hold tribal elders conversations. Think about narrative being used in your story maps. Those of you who are making story maps, and I realize that's a bunch of you. That's kind of an underused tool. So what about entire tribal elders narratives captured, why this place matters, why it's important to our people, etc. And so much more we could do with narrative on story maps. That's just a simple example, but I hope it's an effective one. You don't need to create everything yourself. That's just one of the 3 points that I'm going to highlight here. There are no shortages of tutorials, videos to help you in your journey. You don't have to create, especially for you faculty. That was what we chatted about an hour ago in a meeting, that if there's a lesson out there, if there's an activity that meets your needs, you don't have to create that. Many reasons why people go into education, but I think most of us that are in the education world, we love creating courses and programs and lessons. That's what we love to do. It's a way for us to be creative and tailor it to Wyoming and tailor it to our needs of our students. And so we love doing that. But for those of you online and those of you who are here, you don't have to create every single thing. Example, I'm not an expert in 3D voxel analysis, but there's a lesson in the learn.arcgis.com space on 3D voxels. I'm going to free up 20 hours of my development time for me having to develop that lesson when I already have this lesson out here. It may not do exactly what I would have done in my own lesson, but it does 90%. And more importantly, it frees up 20 hours of my time to do something I really can add value to in my course. That's uniquely from me, thinking about my own background and the things we talked about earlier. Okay, so you don't need to create everything yourself. The other thing that I wanted to do is address this pathways for coding. As the web paradigm has taken hold of many technologies, including geotechnologies, how can you dip a few toes into the shallow end of the geospatial coding pool? How can you dip a few additional toes and maybe an ankle and a leg in there? And how can you tread water in the sort of the mid part of the swimming pool? And how can you get over your head in a good way in the deep end of the swimming pool with coding? The tiny little secret here is one of my caving pictures in New Mexico. Obviously, I'm not sharing this on a web map that shows you exactly where it is for the reasons we talked about earlier, the National Cave Protection Act. But coding is not just for GIS coders. As web GIS and web mapping applications and web data services have taken root and become very viable, and I think we're still in the baby steps of all that. Just think of what's going to happen in the future. We're truly in this big data world with geospatial technology. It's for everyone that has at least some GIS tools on their tool belt. So I'm just saying this for you because I know some of you, even though you're in Dr. Chen's wonderful class on Python, you're saying, you know, I don't want to do that full time. But I just encourage you, if you have a little bit of coding on your tool belt, you're going to be vastly more productive, valued in your organization, and looked upon as a real geospatial hero. Because a lot of people in geospatial, they've had one or two courses, they haven't had a Dr. Chen in their program, etc. So a couple of ways to do this. I would start with Arcade. Just again, on the shallow end. It's a scripting language inside ArcGIS Online. You can start with a one-line expression, graduate to a 2 or 3 line expression. I know this is a lot of text on here, but here's an example. I've got a web map that does this. It's very simple. Again, we're on the shallow end here. Change the style to just, instead of a variable, to a custom variable with an expression. So in this case, I want the 18 to 21-year-olds plus the 22 to 29-year-olds. So I'm basically 18 to 29 out of the total population. So, and I wanted to round it. So I've got this one-line expression. You see where I'm going with this, right? I've got the age, be critical of the data. Where did the data come from? American Community Survey. What year was it gathered? How was it gathered? So all of that being said, a very useful data set. In this case, is from the decennial census from the population in 2000. Why do I say that? Because sometimes people have year A for the numerator and year B for the denominator, or variable A for the numerator divided by variable B for the denominator, or they're making a relationship map of tornadoes and mobile homes. Oh, they're related. There's a lot of mobile homes destroyed by tornadoes. Maybe tornadoes are attracted to mobile homes. Wait a minute. Correlation does not imply causation. And you can divide oranges by apples, and the GIS will do that. But again, this is where your brain comes in. Is that appropriate to do? Does that even make sense? So think about your variables when you're creating these expressions, is my advice. So, okay, my resulting map is right here. And I've got this very simple map here with, I've got a couple of data layers, and I'm going to turn on the percent of 20-somethings in cities. Okay, so now I've got, wouldn't it be great to have a legend? Okay, so I've got percent of 20-somethings in cities. Okay, so bigger, meaning more a younger community, as you probably would suspect, you know, Fort Collins, Colorado. Can I say Colorado State University here? Sorry. Anyway, the point is, in UNC, right, you got college towns. We could do the same thing for Wyoming. The point is, I've got a one-line expression, very simple, but that's not a variable, but you can create your own custom variable that way with this Arcade based on Python scripting language. Okay, now what about if we wanted to dig a little deeper? I've got a Walkability dashboard. It's one of the topics I really care about. How walkable is your community? So, okay, I've got a dashboard here. All of you have seen the COVID JHU dashboard sometime in the last 3 years, correct? You've got, I'm going to zoom in here, a couple of points I collected over at that other college, right, that I mentioned earlier. Okay, good for pedestrians. Oh gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could dock these things? Well, gosh, okay, so here's a geeky photo of me at LCCC. Here we go. Anyway, the point is, I've got some points that I've gathered on this particular. I've got to pop it out in a separate tab. Sorry about that. But here's a couple points. You see where I'm going with this. So I've got a survey 123, and the survey feeds my web map, and the web map feeds the dashboard, right? So, and the survey and the map together feed this dashboard. So just like the JHU COVID dashboard, which got feeds from WHO, CDC, state health departments, this just gets a feed from my one survey. And the reason why I bring it up in this coding section is because there are certain things. How many of you have created a dashboard, an ArcGIS dashboard? Oh my gosh, this is so great. We'll have some more chats. So you know what I mean? It's, and for those of you that haven't, I want the indicator to be over on the right, drag it over there. I want the legend to be over here. I want the map to be over, drag and drop configurable tools. But digging a little deeper, if I do a little bit of coding, I can get into the intermediate level of a dashboard. So you see some elements that are, you suspect, and rightly so, are intermediate level dashboarding with a few lines of code. Okay, so for example, this, I'm pulling the last 3 points submitted to the survey, right? And I'm pulling the photo that I took or someone took. It's an open survey, so you could actually take my walkability. And down here, I've got the 8 top characteristics of walkability. Think outside the box. This doesn't have to be walkable neighborhoods. It could be tree species, water quality, community art, community gardens, places I feel safe on campus, etc. Right? It could be anything. But I'm pulling a couple of pieces of code in here for an intermediate level. So back on this story map, in this case, the indicator, I'm saying creation date is last month. Pretty simple, and that's just from the dashboarding tools. But for the sorted list of descriptions, and again, you're going to have this story map, so you don't have to read all these things. I'm creating a variable, right? And I'm splitting that. And so the result, as you saw, is this. Why did I have to split up the text like that? Because my survey has multiple choices. And the way they're encoded in the surveys, you get these funky, ugly underscores. So I'm cleaning that up a little bit so it looks better on the web map. Is Jeff gradually coming down because it's almost time for me to end? Is that your subtle? Okay, don't worry, I'm going to wrap this up. So, okay, a couple more moments here. And then you've got these coding environments in the developer zone. So if I said, ooh, I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to say, pop this out into a separate tab. You've got these environments, JavaScript, there's other APIs that you can start playing around with. And in here, you can do things like, well, gosh, I'm going to set let's just do one thing. The code, right, powers the map. So if I change the longitude, right, you know what's going to happen, right? The longitude is going to be centered at 116, and now we're going to be further inland from where we were at Malibu. Now we're going to be interior in California, etc. Changing any of these is going to affect the web map. So there are lots of nice bite-sized, gluten-free tutorials that you can dig into in this developer.arcgis.com zone. You can, again, start wading into deeper waters. And to be honest, I did some coding and nothing but coding for 2 years at USGS. I liked it. I learned a lot. That was an interesting world for me, but I did say that's not why I became a geographer. I don't want to just do programming as 100% of my job. And I think many of you are probably that way. That's okay. Again, having these tools on your tool belt will give you some power and help you be more effective in your organization. So those are some mid swimming pool. And then at the deeper end, but still not completely at the deepest end, using the Jupyter notebook. So I loved being in Dr. Chen's class today. The students are using notebooks there. And I'm like, let me just have a moment. This brings me geo tears to my eyes. But using the Jupyter notebooks, ArcGIS Online, insert notebook, done. no libraries to install. You've got a Jupyter notebook inside ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro. It has never been easier to then, okay, let's use that as an environment for me to dip some more toes into these waters. So I would use these ArcGIS notebooks, and I've got some other advice in here. There's lessons on using Python with ArcGIS notebooks, and there's whole tutorials and things that you have access to. I know you're busy students, so again, you've got to juggle, right? What am I going to do for my requirements for my courses versus these other resources that Joseph's talking about? Just again, knowing that they're there during breaks, etc. And no shortage of resources. Okay, let me close with a couple of statements. How many of you feel 100% adequate at your job or your role as students? We all have moments. I mean, we've been doing geospatial. We don't always feel 100%. We're lifelong learners, adopting the lifelong learning attitude. I read a book a while back where the author of the book said, I don't really feel adequate in my profession yet. I don't feel like I've really arrived yet. The author of the book was Paul McCartney. If Sir Paul doesn't feel adequate as a songwriter, oh my gosh, it's okay for you and I to feel a little bit inadequate at times. We're learning from each other. You don't have to feel 100% confident every moment of every day on the job. So I just wanted to share that as a word of encouragement. So I'm going to close with what I feel is the top 5 skills for geotechnology professionals and instructors and students. Be curious. Ask questions that your professor's not even asking you. Oh my gosh. And when you're in the workplace, ask questions that your supervisor's not even asking you. Those are the kind of employees that are very valued in the workplace. You're going beyond what the requirement is. That leads to tenacity. Final .aprx. Final Friday afternoon.aprx. You're very tenacious, right, about your work. Secondly, being able to work with data. Now, I know this sounds super boring, but my spatial reserves data blog. If you take a look at that, it's all about where do I find spatial data? How do I know if it's any good? And societal issues like copyright, privacy, location privacy, etc. Okay. So being able to work with a large variety of data and volume and be critical of it, because anybody and everybody is a potential map creator nowadays. So that's, along with that, the ethical implications of what you're doing. Third, know your geospatial foundations. Very important that you get these wonderful courses here at the university. Look at the geospatial technology competency model to assess where your gaps might be. Be adaptable. Be willing to go international. I know there's a lot of international folks here. If you can't go international, do the following. At your next conference, go to a track that's completely outside your wheelhouse. So at the last AAG Geography Conference, I went to the social work track for a whole afternoon. I met some new people. I learned about their methods. Completely did not know what they studied. Do that. Try to not just hang out with the people that are in your own, your own peeps. Go outside. Yeah, branch out. It'll be good. And be at this Ikigai diagram, this Japanese diagram, what you love to do, what you're good at, what you could be paid for, and what the world needs. Am I at the center of that every day on the job? No, but I try to be. That is my goal. So do some homework on the potential employer. Do they match your own personal ethos in some way? I'm not going to say that Esri is the perfect organization, but I think the reason why Esri has grown is because we listen to what people want us to build. We're not just in some sort of cubicle somewhere saying we're just going to build this. It's what do people want us to build for them to be more efficient or more sustainable, etc. And finally, have good communications. Do you have an elevator speech? Now, I have 6,000 videos on my Our Earth channel. I'm rather passionate about this, and about 20 of those are me in actual elevators. You can watch mine, but make it your own voice, right? Make it your own voice. How are you going to articulate why what you do matters to your potential board of directors, city manager, employees, stockholders, shareholders, etc. So why what you're doing matters. So in closing, folks, this decade will be exciting, wonderful for geotechnologies, and you folks have a key role in achieving that goal. What is the goal? Again, that wise decisions will be made with a spatial perspective and the use of geotechnologies for a healthier, happier, more sustainable future. Ooh, me and my GIS shirt. Where's that? Questions, comments, complaints? Yes, hi.
That you realize you can't have this happen again.
The Last Great Auk was the book I read. It's a young adult book, but it's, I think, suitable for all ages. Yeah, it really drives home that there's some significant changes have happened in the last few centuries, and who's going to change things? This community. So thanks for asking. Okay, I posed a question for some of you that were here before the main group gathered. Some of you may remember my geo quiz. Think of the 48 states, think of interstate highways. Which state capital is the farthest from an interstate highway? Obviously, it's not Cheyenne, right? Because there's 2 interstate highways that go through Cheyenne. You know what the 80 East sign at Cheyenne was for years? I loved this as a geographer. 80 East, Jeff, you might know this, said, what was the destination city for years on 80 East at Cheyenne? Omaha. That's like 400 miles. That was awesome. I'm like, Omaha, that's so cool. Now it says Sydney. It's not as exciting. But I think about destinations. Anybody for the state capital that's farthest from an interstate highway? Yes. Hey, Kevin, right?
Yes.
Hi, Kevin.
Honolulu?
48 states. That's why I eliminated Juneau and Honolulu. Actually, there's an interstate there. It's H1, which is weird because there's an interstate in Hawaii. So there is an interstate there, but Juneau would have been, but no, it's, yep. Focus on the 48. Yep. But you're thinking spatially, and that's good. I want to be sensitive to your time, so feel free to go to your next adventure, but I wish you all the best, folks. I know you will be successful. And those of you that want to chat more about the state capitals and the interstate highways, I will be here. Appreciate the chat today, and I hope it's been encouraging. You folks, map on.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Dr. Kerski. That was inspirational. That wasn't inspirational. I don't know what is. So there's cake upstairs. And happy GISday.
Yes.
All right.
This question could be fun. Don't quite.
Oh, more news and events. Keep going on the screen right now.
City, that's the capital.
Augusta was the capital name.
Sorry, we're not that far.
Trying to get everyone. Yeah.
Is that mother gas?
Bangor?
Oh.
Bangor? Is
Bangor?
Oh, and it's Augusta. Well, I don't know if that's correct or not.
Oh.
No, it's Augusta. It's the capital.
Go ahead.
Bangor, Bangor is capital.